I think I experience imposter syndrome every day of my life. I kind of think you don't stop, right? And I also think it's quite positive in a way because you're never complacent. You're always looking for growth. And so it's to kind of switch the way to think about it. You're always constantly looking to justify yourself and your value. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of unavoidable, and especially I think that I'm quite lucky. I've had sort of mentors and support in my career, and they've given me a degree of confidence in myself and my judgment. And then now I feel like I'm finally at a stage where that confidence is translating into the role. And you really need it when you're sort of advising people at that senior level, CEOs, COOs and the board, because ultimately I'm in charge of one of the major components of the risk function for the tournament.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Emily Jackson, Head of Legal at the FIFA Women's World Cup. Emily started off as a lawyer working in private practice at Westpac before she made the jump into sport, studying at Cricket Australia, then the ICC 2019 Cricket World Cup, Expo 2020 in Dubai, and is now in probably the coolest legal job in Australia since the 2000 Olympics. She's an incredible person and a great friend of the show with lots to look out for, including her journey to work in sport, her experience stepping into a leadership position, and what it's like to work overseas, plus the ins and outs of the FIFA Women's World Cup. We're excited. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Grad Podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. I'm back. I'm Ryan Walker. Joining me is the conscientious Ruben Williams. We are two mates who met at Cricket Australia, and each week we learn how people made it in sports, and then we tease out their career decisions, their work habits, skills, and everything they do that makes them great. Also, you can learn how to get in, get promoted, and get thriving in the sports industry. How are you, Rubes?
G'day, it's good to have you back. Finally, I was a bit lonely last week whilst you were out with COVID, so it's nice to have you in this room again.
It is good to be back, and I must say, if I had have appeared on the show last week, the voice, it just would not have worked. I would have been clearing the throat, would have been sniffling the whole time, coughing. It wouldn't have been good quality. So we thought we'd give it to you, and it was pure. Well,
I'm not sure how I dodged it because we literally spent a full 4 days together and you walked away with COVID and I'm only mildly sick.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, isn't it? Maybe it just shows how good your immune system is.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, it's got me worried because last week was very good. It made me think, am I really required in this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely you are.
But no, good job on your own, and it is daunting. So, no, it's good to be back and good to be at health.
I liked your word, by the way, conscientious, because it reminded me of primary school reports or even high school reports, because I feel like it's such a go-to word for teachers when they can't think of how to describe their student.
100%.
And the only reason I say this is because I feel like I got conscientious on about 10 of my reports because the teachers were too lazy to actually articulate what I was up to at school.
Yeah.
But if we say conscientious, then, mum and dad think, Ruben cares about his work. So that'll get me through.
It's kind of one of those words that just, it's kind of a cop-out in a way, I reckon. It's just like, you cannot be that great at something, but you can still be called conscientious.
Yeah, at least he cares.
He's conscientious, though. It's all good. But my thinking with that word is kind of going back to the well a bit nostalgic. We used to, I guess, go real deep with the adjectives, super adjectively words. That's not even a word. But... I thought
I'd go proper adjectives, rather than
sentences,
rather than titles, like the Prince of Lawn. I think you came up at one point.
So it's good. So I went back to the well.
Nice.
I'm sure I've done that before, by the way.
Yeah, we're 230 odd episodes in, so
I've just got a feeling.
There's a good chance.
Anyway, it's good to be back, and this is a great episode, so I'm very excited. If you haven't already, please follow us on LinkedIn, and if you want to connect with us and over 500 others working in sport, become a member of the Sports Grad community. Rose, what's been happening lately?
Oh, plenty. Well, we bumped into our man Daniel Raffin, who is a Sydney bloke, came down to Melbourne for the Grand Prix and let us know that he has got an internship at the South Sydney Rabbitohs as a customer experience intern. So he is going to be hanging out with Russell Crowe on a daily basis, I believe.
Latrell.
Yep.
we know him.
Yep. Random bunnies dude who goes around the world to events. So well done to you, Daniel. And Shekhar Sridhar, another favourite of the show, has just picked up a new volunteering role at the Melbourne Football Club through the connections he's made over there. So well done to you, Shekhar. A couple of new jobs posted recently on the jobs board. There is a media rights coordinator role at Cricket Australia that's just gone up, which would be outstanding. And we know the manager for that, who is a lot of fun. Abby, great friend.
He'd be listening, so
absolutely.
Good on you, Abby.
He's a lawyer. Emily's a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
well timed that role.
Yeah.
Kind of in the realm of who we're talking to today. So.
Yeah. He's also a great example of how you can go from one field to another. Anyway, we might circle back to Abby.
Yeah.
Anyway, another job, corporate partnerships role at the Western Sydney Wanderers Football Club. So if you're into your soccer up in New South Wales, there's a job for you there. And then events coming up in the community. We haven't done one of these for a while, but we're very excited to be hosting another job fair where we call on some of our favourite organisations to talk about the jobs that they have in market at the moment. You can ask them any questions that you want. You can connect with the hiring managers and you can get elite access to jobs before anybody else. So that is coming up next week. But if you'd enjoy an email from us every Friday, recapping on everything that's going on so you don't miss out on any events, any content or podcasts or any jobs going out, subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. There's a link in our show notes to join, or you can head to the website sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter.
Brilliant. Well, let's get cracking. Awesome episode coming up. So grab a pen, enjoy this chat with Emily Jackson. With a new course, Deakin Business School is preparing graduates to capitalise on the golden opportunities in sports management. It's time to take charge of your career with the Executive Masters of Sports Management, a one-of-a-kind qualification which is designed as a more advanced version of Deakin's popular Master of Business in Sports Management, which is the #1 ranked program of its kind in Australia. Delivered online via Deakin's Cloud Campus, the EMSB provides students with a focus on specific business knowledge, including areas of strategy, sports governance, leadership, and fan engagement. Capitalise on the golden decade with a degree that will give you the skills you need. EJ, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
EJ, as you know, our podcast is all about career advice. And when we were working together at Cricket Australia, you left me with some fabulous career advice.
Oh, God, what is that?
And that was, you said to me, Ruby, don't be too quick to make friends at work in your 20s because there's a great chance that they're going to pack up and leave on you and the emotional toll is not worth it. And you have done that several times. But here we are, and it's a pleasure that we are still friends and you're still willing to chat with us.
Absolutely. You're one of the rare friends that survived the post-work transition.
Yes. There's a real shift in the relationship when it clocks over 12 a.m. on a Friday and you're now weekend friends.
Absolutely. I believe I first coined the term work friends to weekend friends. So.
Brilliant. Well, it has been a long time coming. I think we were saying before, this episode had to be in person. It was a very special episode. We've been waiting to get you on for a very, very long time. So it is great to have you.
I've just been waiting for an opportunity to, find an environment where it was more suitable just to interrogate you, to throw questions at you that, wouldn't be normal in an outside setting. So,
I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I respond well to interrogation.
Yeah,
excellent.
You know exactly what to say without saying anything. Brilliant. Well, how we start these episodes is we do a few quick fire questions to get to know you better, which is a new segment this year, but we're loving it so far because our audience can actually learn everything about EJ from the get-go. So I'll kick us off by asking, what is your first ever job?
My first ever job was in Whitcoulls. Which was a fantastic job because I could turn up very hungover. I mean, I was very responsible. It was a summer job and it was great.
Nice.
And what did you study at university?
I studied a Bachelor of Arts in Law Conjoint with a major in English.
Favourite sporting moment?
I Probably the storming the SCG with Ruby.
Yes. Yes.
That was a fabulous
Celebrate
night.
buddies moment.
One of the great moments. I've got real regret not coming on that flight with you, Roofs.
EJ didn't even know what she was getting into that night.
I ended up on somebody's shoulders. I fully, was falling down off the seats. It was amazing.
Jeez.
For those who don't know, Emily's from New Zealand, if you haven't picked that up yet. I'm not sure if you have an AFL team yet, but when I got to Sydney, I was like, EJ, we've got an extra ticket to this game, but he's going to kick goal 1,000. You're like, yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Might as well.
I never committed to an AFL team in all my time in Melbourne because it's a very, it's a very touchy subject and people get very passionate defending their team. So it's a great opportunity to kind of get to know somebody and see the sort of qualities they identify within a team. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Beautiful. Well, we share favourite sporting moment, which is great. Do you have a favourite question that you like asking candidates?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think probably one thing that I find really useful, especially in this most recent role, is to ask them what their preferred management style is. Because I think that's something that, in some ways the manager has to adapt to the people they're managing. And so it's really helpful to understand if there's, a synchronicity there and if,
Nice.
they sort of like a great deal of support or if they like a more hands-off approach. So that's my serious question that I like asking. And my fun question is, what are you currently watching? Because it's just a question that lightens the mood a little bit and kind of again gets that little bit of insight, and people are kind of very serious getting interviewed and really trying to impress, and so it's nice to kind of cut the tension a bit.
Yeah.
What's the best answer you've received to that TV question?
I think somebody went full in on like the Real Housewives. I really respected that because I was like, you're not even trying to be intellectual, you're just being straight up with who you are.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we were really looking for someone who was quite fun and have a chat with, so it was a good match ultimately.
There'd be people like making up like what they think is normal things to watch, and then the other people saying, I'm rewatching Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars,
Yep. Other ones are like, I only watch David Attenborough documentaries or something serious.
Absolutely. Or you can tell when they're like, you're trying to angle it so it's for the job, like, I only watch, these
Suits.
football documentaries. Yes, and you're like, okay, but.
Now tell me about the trashy shows.
Exactly. That's what I want to know. I want to know about your personality.
Yeah. What do you watch when you're hungover? That's the one we
I
need.
think that's a real crucial question, isn't it? What is your go-to hangover show?
Totally. Next one is, are you associated or have you previously been associated with any grassroots sporting clubs?
Not a lot growing up, to be honest. I was sort of on the I was a big keen dancer growing up, and so that dominates your entire life. And in fact, never really played group sports, to my detriment, I think. And I guess I was on the Football Victoria disciplinary panel, and that was quite an interesting when I was at Cricket Australia, and that was a really interesting insight into the kind of grassroots nature of football and sort of the conflicts that emerge and a lot of the dynamics of the sport at that level. So that was super interesting to be part of.
I have met a lot of lawyers, and I remember when you first told me that you were volunteering on this tribunal, and they were asking me, how do I get into sports law? Every single time I told them, well, I've got this friend, Emily. She's now the head of legal at the FIFA Women's World Cup. The way she got her start was by volunteering on a tribunal. So I think it's excellent grounding place.
That's what I tell a lot of people. So you always get hit up on sort of LinkedIn and things, and that's kind of what I tell people as well. Like there's a lot of ways like in your career, which we'll talk about later, obviously, that you can prepare yourself for this type of role. But I think just getting involved in that volunteering side of things is really crucial to get that exposure and knowledge.
And last quick fire question. If you had 30 minutes to pick the brain of anybody, who would it be?
Ooh, great question. I mean, my go-to answer for this is always Beyonce because I love her. Yeah, I don't know. This is probably a bit of a cliche answer, but Jacinda Ardern, I think she's, was an amazing leader for New Zealand and very sad to see her step away. She faced a lot of criticism within New Zealand, and I think she handled it beautifully, and it would just be really cool to get to know her. be best friends.
Did you got to know her, didn't you?
I saw her at an event, and she was kind enough to take a selfie with like the angle, so it looked like we were, mates. And I fully, dined out on that one.
The way you told me earlier before this show was that you were invited to the game with her and were spending the entire match with her.
I am being misconstrued here. I'm being misrepresented.
Wow.
Well, not everyone gets to meet their hero, so I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, let's dive into it. There's lots happening at FIFA at the moment. There's a World Cup coming. How is it? What's going on?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's really intense. So we're obviously in the last build up to the event, and it sort of feels like it's been a long time coming. So I came on board in August 2021. And sort of last year, we were sort of doing all the preparatory stuff and getting everything in place. And now it's really kicking off. We've got 100 days to go coming soon. And, we've got a lot of really cool promotional events. And then obviously the tournament itself. So it's busy.
Yeah. I can't believe, it's come so quick. Like, I feel like it always seemed like it was so far away, and it's all of a sudden it's here.
I know.
And it is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
It was a really quick runway because it only got awarded sort of in 2020. And so then obviously with COVID, everything got a little bit delayed. So really the main team didn't come on board till mid-2021. So that's 2 years to pull together a massive co-hosted tournament across 2 countries. First time FIFA's ever done that. And, make sure we have all the staff in place, all the tournament time planning. What's really interesting about the structure of this tournament, interesting for me, I don't know if it's interesting for you guys, is that it's kind of a different corporate structure. So we're a direct subsidiary of FIFA. So normally you have a local organising committee that will be affiliated to, in Australia, the National Sporting Organisation. So for example, for the T20 Cricket World Cup, it was a subsidiary of Cricket Australia. But this is a direct FIFA subsidiary. So they've never kind of had that on-the-ground LOC experience with a tournament of this size from this far out. So it's kind of, for them, I think it's been a really great sort of learning experience. For us, it's been a great learning experience. There's been some gaps. There's been some opportunities. But it's been fantastic and a really collaborative sort of process.
How do you go working across 3 time zones? You got New Zealand, Australia, and then Switzerland.
Well, I don't sleep very much. No, that's not fair. No, it's it has been tricky, I will say, especially moving into daylight savings time over summer. So it means kind of there's been quite a lot of late calls till like 9, 10 at night. And then now I'm in Australia, so obviously that's early calls. But for the most part, I think it's just been about trying to respect people's time where possible and making sure that meetings actually have a purpose. Yeah, and it's been great because especially with the start, everyone was in COVID, so it was COVID lockdown, so everyone was on Teams calls anyway, so it didn't really feel like you were too separate from people.
And is there anything particular about the tournament you're most excited for?
I think that I'm really, really excited to see, I think, the groundswell of support, especially coming into the final games. I think it's going to be off the charts. It's going to be a scale that's never before been seen, particularly for women's sport. And I hope and I expect that it will kind of redefine the commercial landscape for women's sport, because that's sort of the purpose of this tournament. FIFA's put a lot of money into it, more investment than they've ever done into a women's tournament before, with the goal of sort of having it be a commercial proving ground for women's sport globally. So it can be an example that you point to say, well, look, when you invest in it, you get results.
Yeah, amazing. Can we dive into that for a sec?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, tell us about what's the commercial landscape been like for women's sport in the past, and how is this one different?
Yeah, so it's kind of evolved quite rapidly from my perspective. So I think that when I was at Cricket Australia, the leadership team there were very focused on building the women's game, to their credit, at a time when, not a lot of other sports were seriously considering it. Even, within cricket, Australia was sort of probably the first sport to do so. And so that really credit goes to senior leadership there. And, that you can see that in the landmark sort of equal pay deal and sort of treating the women's team as its own entity, allowing it to go professional, and sort of addressing that historic underinvestment in women's sport, which kind of continues to hold it back. And so I think the shift, even in the time that I was at Cricket Australia, so at the start, the women's team was sort of enveloped within some of the men's deals as sort of, not an afterthought, but it was, and you also get this. And I think that over that time, there was a real focus within the commercial team to develop the investment in the women's side. So, for example, their own sponsorship deals, making sure that they were pitched as an entirely separate property, and making sure that there were women's games broadcast in the latest broadcast deal. That was another big important move forward. And then at FIFA, the restructure of their recent commercial program has sort of had a dedicated vertical for the women's game. And so that means that there's just a lot more of a landscape to attract sponsors. It's a really unique approach. It's probably a first in the world. And I think that it's really exciting. It really shows that they're kind of going all in.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool to be a part of.
Oh, it's really exciting. I feel very lucky.
Well, let's go way back to the beginning of your career and find out how you got to this point. What was the sequence of work experiences, qualifications, other different things you've done in your career to lead you to this point?
So I started out fairly classically, as I said before, doing the BALB degree at the University of Auckland. And I actually didn't think I'd be a lawyer. I just kind of got funneled into it through applying for the Summer Clerk program, getting selected, and then thinking, well, great, awesome, I don't have to make a decision here. I was incredibly lucky. I started out at Buddle Finlay, which is a corporate commercial firm in Auckland, and had a really great introduction to the practice there. But then I sort of got the opportunity to work for a boutique entertainment law firm. And at that time, that was kind of a bit of a risk, moving away from such a great brand, such a great company, to a sort of smaller boutique firm. But I got to do some amazing work. I got to, work for artists, record labels,
Did Beyonce come up in that?
I mean, only in my heart. But no, I got to kind of do a really good variety of work, and I feel like I got to attack the work at a more senior level than I potentially would have if I'd stayed at, the original corporate law firm. And so that was a really great learning experience. And then after a few years, I sort of, we have our traditional overseas experience. So I decided for mine, I got selected for the International Student Visa Program at Broadway Dance Centre. So I took 6 months to go to New York and just danced and had a great time, fell absolutely in love with New York. And then decided when I came back that was the goal, that I wanted to work in America one day. And so I studied for the New York bar exam, passed, and got admitted over there. And in the meantime, I sort of took an approach to my career where I was looking to build experience in the eventual area that I wanted to sort of end up in, which is ideally entertainment and sports law. So definitely nailing that one, thank goodness. But yeah, so I worked at an IP law firm while I was studying for the bar exam. Then I worked in Westpac in their digital marketing and sponsorship team. And that was great because it kind of gave me the experience of negotiating sponsorships on the side of the sponsor. And that positioned me really well for the role at Cricket Australia, which obviously was sort of a corollary experience. And so I applied for the role. I was looking to kind of move to Australia to broaden my experience a bit. And then the role at Cricket Australia came up. I applied for it. I got it despite not knowing anything about cricket. I had to Google what an ODI was on my first day, which may infuriate some of your listeners. Luckily, my then boyfriend, now husband, took me aside and explained the game very well. So I worked at Cricket Australia for 3 years, absolutely loved it. I got to meet some really cool people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Any names?
Well, initials, RW.
Yep, you nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. And then my husband won the green card lottery. So we decided that we'd kind of make the move more internationally. And I also got headhunted for a role at Expo 2020 in Dubai. So we decided that on the way to America, we'd stop in Dubai for a year, which turned into 18 months because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then following the pandemic, we were both just feeling pretty homesick. And my husband particularly wanted to kind of move home to be close to family. So this role came up and it was perfect, It was an amazing step up in terms of my career, fantastic company to work for, fantastic event. And so I jumped at the chance.
Jeez. Amazing.
How's that for a journey?
I love the sabbatical to go dancing in New York.
Yeah.
I've done enough lawyering for now. Let's just go dancing. We'll come back to lawyering
Best go
later.
dancing now.
You know what? It was the best thing I did because I was really at that crossroads in my career where I was like, do I even want to be a lawyer, Because, working in law is intense. And so after about 4 to 5 years, it can get pretty burnt out. And then what that determined for me was that I did not want to be a dancer, but I did want to be a lawyer. So it was kind of great because it really, I think, redirected my purpose and drive.
Sometimes you need that. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a chef. And then I did work experience in a kitchen and I decided I do not want to be a chef. So I can understand why it can be useful.
I'm not entirely sure I would trust you in the kitchen.
No, I don't enjoy cooking.
I've seen it and it ain't pretty. Let's dive into that Expo 2020 period in Dubai. And you mentioned that was obviously during COVID, which would have been, pretty challenging at times. Can you share a little bit about that experience and what it was like working Dubai and I guess just having to be there, I guess. You're almost trapped because, you couldn't come home, you couldn't go to America, all that kind of thing. Yeah,
it was obviously such a strange period for everyone and I think really unprecedented. And so already I was in this space where I'd moved to an entirely new country. I'd moved without my husband, so I was kind of alone there. And Dubai is very different to Australia and New Zealand in a great way, and that was part of the adventure to move to kind of like a non-Western country and just experience a different type of culture. So it was already a pretty discombobulating experience, and then to have everything sort of shut down and the world stop and borders locked down, it was all pretty stressful, to be honest. And on top of that, the event obviously got postponed. So that was sort of also a really sort of unprecedented thing, and you saw that with the Tokyo Olympics as well, that people had never really explored how to do that, what the mechanisms were to do that, and what the legal implications were for that. So a big part of my role in those first few months was sort of understanding, what the implications were, and really it just came down to commercial negotiations with partners to reflect the changed landscape. And you just had to be very pragmatic, very practical, and come to a middle ground. So it was. I guess being a lawyer was pretty useful at that time. Everyone got very familiar with the term force majeure. And
what does that mean? For everyone listening.
Basically, it's an event beyond either party's control.
Yeah. Used to say that a lot, force majeure.
Sounds so professional.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. And then how did you find your way back to Australia or New Zealand?
Yeah, so basically I think at about May or June. So my contract was sort of up in September. So working in the event space, you're sort of always kind of looking out for what's next. And so I saw this role come up. I actually had a colleague recommend it to me. And, I think the challenge about moving back to New Zealand specifically is that it's a relatively small sporting market. So there's not a lot of capacity for senior lawyers in an in-house counsel capacity. And so I was sort of exploring a few different options, but none of them felt quite right.
Rumours laptop's calling.
Carry on.
So none of them felt quite right. And then this role came up and it was perfect because it was across both. So I'd still get, that level of work and that exposure internationally, plus a great brand on my CV, but also get to spend a significant amount of time at home with my family. So, I applied for the job, interviewed a few times, interviewed with FIFA, and then, got the job.
Amazing. And so how have your feelings changed between working in sport compared to how they felt when you're working in private practice?
Yeah, so private practice is really great. It's a really great sort of starting point for a lot of lawyers. You get great technical training and, get to really develop that skill set. I found I personally prefer working in-house. I kind of like being embedded within a business. I like seeing kind of a project through to its completion and working with the business to develop and deliver something. And I think the distinction with private practice is that you're sometimes working for multiple clients, you're working on a piecemeal basis, so you maybe aren't getting that full picture, and that's obviously not every private practice lawyer, but that was just my experience. And so, I really prefer sort of the practical sort of overview of how the whole business works, because I think you get to step back a bit and be a bit more strategic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the lunchtime boxing sessions are a nice added perk.
Absolutely. Although I have to say I was definitely not up to Ruby's pure power.
Well, there's a few people who attended my first session who would tell you that I was ready to faint and fall over the first time I went to boxing. But I remember arriving and seeing you there in your Sydney Sixers jacket, sprightly as ever. And I was like, oh, I can get along with you. It was a very easy way to make friends, because I think I was only a month into the job at CA. And lunchtime boxing was a nice little connector for people at work.
Oh, it was amazing. And I think cardio is truly the great leveler. I think you really don't know someone until you've seen them almost throwing up from exhaustion, which definitely happened to me a couple of times.
On their knees, on the ground, struggling.
Didn't see you at lunchtime boxing too many times.
Nah.
Where were you, mate?
I think I did maybe 3, and the only reason I was there is because K-Mate was bullying me to get there. So, not my greatest bit of form there, but that's okay. I showed face a few times. I just had the craziest deja vu, by the way, with EJ. It was so random. I was seeing it while you were going through it. I was like, oh, this has happened before.
After this, we have to go have lunch at the Trumbull, and then that would be a great way to cap this all off.
We welcome any opportunity to go to the Trumbull now. It's like it's a novelty.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Get the butter chicken. The
Yes.
jaffle. Are they still doing the jaffle?
Or the Friday Parma.
Oh, got to have a
The
Friday
leftovers go into the jaffle every week.
It's not a jaffle if it's not leftovers.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about the financial point of view of being a lawyer. What are the differences between sort of going in-house in sport versus private practice? Is it a crazy margin, or is it relatively similar?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think pay transparency is quite important generally, so it's good to have the conversation. And I think one of the things you do have to be aware when you're preparing for a career in-house in sport is that there is going to be a difference, because in private practice you're quite banded. There are tiers that you move up through as a junior lawyer, and then obviously when you get to partnership level, it's kind of a profit share model. And the core difference is, I think, in private practice you're a profit centre, so you're making money. In-house, you're a cost centre, so you are, a support service essentially for the business. So you are salaried in-house, and there's sort of only discretionary bonuses. Nothing's really guaranteed, and as we all know, working in a sports organisation, money is always tight, so those bonuses probably shouldn't be counted or relied upon. So I think that, there is a difference. For me, that trade-off is well worth it. Due to the nature of the role. And I think one thing also to be aware of is there is also sort of, I guess, maybe, you have to accept a little bit of a lower salary sometimes to work in a passion area. And I think that's definitely the case in sports, because there are so many people wanting the role. The role in itself is seen as a reward. So while I would always encourage everyone to negotiate up to, the market value and to do their research and understand what other kind of people in the area are being paid, I think that just to prepare yourself that's the reality of it.
Would you also say, though, the hours worked would be different to that at a private practice? Like, I've got friends who are lawyers and often they're at work till 3 a.m. and then up at 7. It's like, is that a common thing for you?
Kind of. I mean, not personally for me. I think sports is probably, it's a pretty issues-rich environment. So, so there tends to be sort of a constant, pretty intense workload.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing to maybe be prepared for coming into the role. And that can fluctuate depending on the time of the year. When you're coming up to an event, et cetera, it's a bit more intense. Generally with in-house roles, though, there is a bit more of that trade-off in terms of work-life balance. So I don't think anyone would say they work a classic 9 to 5, but there's just a bit more regularity, a bit more time for family and stuff.
If you had to list 2 things that make it worthwhile, what would they be?
Working with great people, working for something you're passionate about.
Love it.
Nice. For all those lawyers out there. Bang.
This is your first head of position, which is amazing. I think you have probably got the coolest sports law job that's ever existed in Australia, probably since the Olympics, maybe.
I agree.
But typically, you've had to report to a head of. So how have you had to adapt in this role?
Yeah, I think it has been a really big shift for me, and this is my first people management role as well, so it's been a big learning curve. So I think kind of the key difference is, as you noted, in a traditional legal department, you're normally reporting up into a head of or general counsel, and they sort of assist with workflow, workload, and all of the day-to-day people management aspects of the role. So shifting into that space, where I'm reporting to the CEO at the moment, it's just a bit of a shift in mindset because I don't really have a manager that necessarily understands the day-to-day work I do, and my job is to deliver on deliverables for him. So it's just a bit of a shift in dynamic, and my boss is great, love you, Dave. But it's not really his job to kind of assist in my workflow, that's my job. And so I think shifting into the people management side of things has been really great. It's something that I was so excited about in this role, and really love my team. I feel so lucky with the people I've been able to recruit. I think the great thing about sports is that you get such great applicants, and so you can kind of pick the people that fit best with your personality and your vision for the team. And I feel like I really got some amazing people. But I think that people are also the most difficult thing about any role. So I think the challenge for me has been trying to adapt myself to them and try and deliver on what they need. And make them feel supported, because I think that's the other thing about working in such an intense role. You're constantly getting people coming at you left, right and centre, and I think you really need someone at some points to step in and mediate between you and the business. You need someone to step in and help you prioritise, and also sometimes someone to vent to. So getting that balance right has been sort of what I've been trying to focus on. They probably tell you I don't always get it right, but I am always trying.
So are you 100% working with your team or helping your team as opposed to looking through contracts, or is that still some part of it?
No, so I'm probably, I would say, equally split. So I'm not fully dedicated to people management. I was brought on with the idea that I would be still fulfilling quite a bit of the workload. So that has been another tricky thing to balance, particularly because the nature of a team is that when, they go on leave or they're fully at full capacity, you kind of have to then absorb that work. So kind of balancing all the different components of the role has been something that I've not always been successful at. And honestly, my personal time has taken probably a bit of a hit from that perspective. And I think that's just part of the learning curve of moving into this type of a role.
Are there any things that you've leaned on or people that you've leaned on to kind of help with that new learning curve?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my boss is really great. So Dave Beach is the CEO, and, he's the type of guy that, if you go into his office and you're having a meltdown, he'll be like, okay, how do we help? So he's really great, and also just a great person to talk to. It feels like a very equal dynamic, and he really respects my opinion, which is really important when you're kind of a risk function, is to make sure that there's a level of respect for your opinion, and when you kind of have a degree of caution over an area. So he's really great. My special shout out to my husband, who's always a massive source of support. Cooking the dinners, being the the silent hero, and while I'm on meetings at all hours. So
the data scientist.
That's it. It was soon to be. If anyone's looking for a data scientist, hire my husband. He's studying at the moment.
Shout out to Simon. He'd be tuning in.
Absolutely. Wonderful man.
Yeah.
And regular listener of the show.
Friend of the show as well.
Friend of the show. I love it.
Brilliant. Tell us about the differences between working at a tournament. There's obviously a lifespan to that, and then an organisation like CA who is ongoing. Like, what are the differences between working at the two?
Yeah, so I think that the difference is working within a national sporting organisation is that the rhythm is very cyclical, right? So you're in event delivery event delivery mode. For cricket, it was obviously over the summer period. Then after that, you kind of have a little bit of a regrouping stage. A lot of the strategic repositioning happens during the middle of the year, and then you're on the build-up to event delivery again. So it kind of becomes this more predictable rhythm where you can sort of understand where the lulls are, and you can kind of get more strategic, deeper work done during that time, and you can resource up and down in an ideal world appropriately according to that. And I think the difference with that is probably a degree of sustainability. So you have to make sure that you've got a sustainable workload, you've got a well-resourced team, and the right experience levels. And so for tournament time, I think it's less predictable. There is a build-up, but it's also a limited sort of duration. So there's a lot more certainty about certain things. And I think that it's really crucial to understand how that limited term kind of comes into all of the contracts you're drafting. And yeah, just the fact that your resourcing is going to be pretty intense for a period, but then, you're going to obviously be finishing up the event after that. So,
and you did a secondment to the 2019 Cricket World Cup, so you've kind of felt what it's like to deliver an event versus a cricket season. Is there a difference in when that event delivery time comes?
Yeah, I mean, I think shifting to the event space was really suited me because I'm always kind of seeking growth in my career, and I have moved around quite a bit. Like I think, and that's quite unusual for a lawyer. Normally, the lawyer, you kind of stay in a role for a long period of time. I've always sort of, when I felt that I was hitting my peak of growth in a role, kind of moved on to the next. And that's why I think tournaments kind of really suit me, because it's a defined project, it's a defined lifespan, and you can often take that next step up in seniority as well, because for an event they may look a little bit more junior, for example, a head of role. So there's just more opportunities in this space. And I think the difference is, so for the 2019 Cricket World Cup, it was a fantastic role because I was essentially just seconded for the rights management program. So I flew in for the tournament. I essentially got to attend a bunch of cricket matches, of course, working in the rights protection program, I must hasten to add. But it was just great because you get part of that, to be part of the event delivery excitement. You get to see the delivery of the event on the ground, and experience all of the highs and lows and pressures, whereas often for a lawyer, you're kind of behind a desk the whole time, so you don't necessarily get to have that embedded nature in the role. So that's really fun. And then the other difference is obviously when I was at Expo 2020, it was a little bit more of a long-term strategic role, so you could kind of get a little bit more strategic about the way you were structuring certain. So I was working within the sort of revenue, dealing with all the revenue generating components of the Expo 2020, and so that enabled me to kind of take quite a strategic approach, and I think that was really appreciated within the Expo because I think people could get quite siloed, and so having someone to step back and take a look at things overall was quite, I think, appreciated. And yeah, then unfortunately I missed out on the event delivery because I had to come over for this role. So yeah, it was a shame.
You did all the work, and then all right, you guys handle it from here.
Well, I knew they had it.
Yeah.
It was interesting what you're saying about how working on a defined project like a tournament forces you to learn quicker, and it also kind of forces you to move on as well. Like it's impossible to get stuck in a job there because the job ends.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I don't have a job after December, and so you kind of, and the great thing about working in events also is that you kind of have an inbuilt network of people who will also be going on to the next event. So for example, Australia has what's called the Green and Gold Decade coming up. So it's, Women's World Cup, 2 Rugby World Cups, the Olympics in 2032, the Regional Victoria Commonwealth Games. So there's a real series of events that people can flow onto from there. And part of the job of the workforce team at the LFS, the local FIFA subsidiary, is to ensure that there is there's contact with these other events, and so we can sort of almost organise going from one event to the next, which is great because it means that we retain people until the end of the contract. People aren't leaving early to go to another event, but it also means that people have a degree of certainty over what their next role is going to be. So that's kind of something that is pretty unique to Australia and pretty exciting. So I think the event space is going to be great for the next decade at least, if not longer. Yeah.
And the event space, you got greater chance of Rihanna walking past your window.
Yes, I'm sorry. No, that was actually the best moment of my life. When she came to the Cricket World Cup in 2019, I've been in the same room as Rihanna.
Jeez. So you're like Beyonce, you've seen Rihanna, there's a lot happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about imposter syndrome for a sec. We both went through this at Cricket Australia, both walking into this organisation that we'd looked at in bright lights for our entire lives and thought, gosh, do we deserve to be here? I was wondering if you could talk to your experience with imposter syndrome and how has that crossed your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I experience imposter syndrome every day of my life. I kind of think you don't stop, right? And I also think it's quite positive in a way because you're never complacent. You're always looking for growth. And so it's to kind of switch the way to think about it. You're always constantly looking to justify yourself and your value. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of unavoidable, and especially, as a woman, as a young-ish woman, generously calling myself young. Yeah.
You're still young at heart.
Thank you, Ruby.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes you don't get taken seriously, and I'm a pretty bubbly, smiley person as well, so that can feed into that perception. And so I think that I'm quite lucky. I've had sort of mentors and support in my career, and they've given me a degree of confidence in myself and my judgment. And then now I feel like I'm finally at a stage where that confidence is translating into the role. And you really need it when you're sort of advising people at that senior level, CEOs, COOs, and the board. Because ultimately I'm in charge of one of the major components of the risk function for the tournament. So they have to have a degree of confidence in who is there. So I guess partially it's fake it till you make it, but also acknowledging that that's something everyone experiences. It's a natural part of your career. And there's I think there's a maxim that you kind of grow in your career to failure. So you grow to the degree where you tap out on your sort of potential, right? So I hope to never be in a situation where I'm fully complacent. I don't think I'm learning. I always want to have the opportunity for growth. And so I think imposter syndrome is sort of a natural sort of part of that. You're always going to feel like you've got to prove yourself.
How did you feel when you got awarded the head of job?
Nervous, excited, so excited. But I always have sort of I've said that I get imposter syndrome, but I also have sort of a degree of confidence in myself that I can pretty much do anything.
You are incredibly capable.
Thank you.
I know you very well, and you are great.
Thank you very much. I promise I'm not paying him to say that. But no,
sounds like it.
I think the side effect of having had so many different roles in my career is that I sort of feel like you could drop me into any company and I could pretty quickly figure out what the dynamics are, who I need to be talking to, and what the strategic priorities are, and build relationships. So I think that's a skill set that I've developed. Hard-won skill set. And so I sort of think that while I have nervousness and about taking up a role, I'm also always pretty confident that I'll figure it out.
You're doing a pretty good job.
Yes, thanks.
more money in the door. You're going to think EJ's paying me with this next question, but we've had a few touch points with the Women's World Cup team across a number of different teams, but I'm interested to hear, and they all absolutely love you, by the way, just to chop that in. But what is your approach to managing people? Like you mentioned before, it's a new thing. Like what's your couple of things that you keep in mind when you're doing that?
I think I'm going to have to call this sponsored content.
Yeah. FIFA are paying us to make it look amazing
Absolutely.
jobs. Yeah.
No, I think my approach to managing people, like I said before, is, well, first of all, I recruit for personality. I think skill set can be developed. Most lawyers that we're interviewing for these roles have a base level skill set that is excellent. So the thing that's going to make them stand out from the crowd is personality, fit within a team, and their ability to sort of adapt to different circumstances, different stressors and workflows. So yes, like I said before, I've been incredibly lucky to recruit the most amazing team. But then I think part of that is getting to know them on a deeper level and understand what drives them, what they're interested in, what they want to be developed in. Because I think that a flaw I've had in previous roles is that managers haven't really identified growth opportunities for me. And that ultimately resulted in me leaving roles because, as I said, you don't want to tap out on growth. Especially, as a woman, you kind of have, if you're planning on having kids, you have a limited time frame in which to develop that skill set. So from my perspective, you have to be sort of growing and developing the entire time that you're working. So part of what I'm trying to bring to this role is to understand where their interest areas are, where they want their skill set to develop, and kind of help them understand the industry. So particularly in this role, one of the really nice things about working in an event is that you can be really open about the fact that the event is ending. So you can be open about your future career plans, and you don't have to kind of pretend, I want to work here forever. And so that has resulted in me also creating development opportunities and networking opportunities for my staff within people I know within the sports industry. And so I think it's really personally very rewarding for me to sit down with them and see where they want to develop and try and help them grow in that space. And if anything, that's what I'd like to spend more time on as we go forward.
That's great. Do you have any sort of routines or rituals or check-ins? What's kind of like your regular touch points with your team? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so we schedule a weekly one-on-one. So I schedule all my one-on-ones on a Wednesday with my team, and that sort of starts as kind of an emotional check-in. How are they feeling? Are they stressed? Are they feeling under pressure? What particular areas are worrying or concerning them? And then once we move past that, we sort of go through sort of a workflow, what they've got on at the moment, and then that's my opportunity to try and help them prioritise because they will never not be busy. So it's about helping them understand, and I'm lucky that I'm working at that more strategic level so I can sort of understand the priorities of the business, because when you work for the business, when you work at in-house counsel, you are everyone's always jumping up and down for you to do work for them. Everything's always urgent, especially, and it's genuinely urgent because we've genuinely got a hard deadline. So, but you have only so many hours in a day. So, so their one-on-one is a really good point to kind of check in, help them prioritise, and help them push back on the business if they need it, because sometimes they're developing relationships, and it really is up to the manager to sort of step in and be like, they're experiencing a little bit of pressure this week, they'll get to it next week. So that's our one-on-ones. So I schedule them all on a Wednesday so I can sort of get a point-in-time snapshot of where everyone's capacity is sitting. And then we have a weekly team meeting on a Friday, and that's where we sort of share information as a team and, again, sort of check in on how everyone's feeling. And that's where I also kind of tell them sort of broader information about the team and how things are developing, anything they need to know.
Amazing.
Nice. Comprehensive.
I'm making myself sound so great on this app.
Yeah, you are, as I said.
Hashtag SponCon.
Yeah. And then is that when the Real Housewives check-in comes on Friday too?
Absolutely. Well, look, I will say there definitely has been time for some shit chat.
Which is important.
I think it's important. You have to enjoy it. You spend so much time with each other. You have to enjoy each other's presence, and you have to be a support for each other as well. So, everyone on my team is really great. I'm really lucky.
Literally. Well, like when we were at Cricket Australia, the bloke who won Employee of the Year was the guy who organised Friday drinks. Shout out to Lachlan Seller. Well done. So companies value this stuff.
I think so. I think that's ultimately like what also ensures longevity in an organisation. Like obviously not as relevant for an event, but within cricket, I think one of the things that was the biggest benefit to me was this, internal group of friends we had, which were a great support to each other, and we were spread across a bunch of different areas, which was also had the benefit of me getting an insight into how other departments worked and what their priorities were. And so I think that ultimately really helped me to serve the business better. Plus, I had fun.
Yeah, really great time. Just on that and interest in other areas of the business, if you could step into someone else's job just for one day, whose job would that be?
I reckon I would really enjoy being in a sort of head of partnerships or commercial role. And don't worry, John, I'm not coming for your job. No, I think that it would be really cool to kind of, because obviously you really work together as the legal team and the partnerships or commercial team to sort of bring on board sponsors. And they do the sort of, obviously Ryan, you were in the commercial team, they do all of the kind of upfront engagement. And then when it comes to contracting time, that's when it can get a little bit tricky, a little bit spicy as you work through some issues and kind of address their concerns while still protecting the business's interests. So you work really closely with them, and kind of I think that one thing I really pride myself on and enjoy about the role is the ability to develop relationships. I think that's also one thing that sets in-house apart from private practice, is that you're kind of developing these relationships internally that really help you in your work. And I just think that relationships is such an important component of what that team does. I would really like the chance to kind of be less on the negotiating side and more on the delivery side. Also because I'm inherently a people pleaser.
Keep them happy side.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus so many cool events. Like we're just stuck behind the laptop. You guys are going out on boat cruises and stuff.
It just reminds me of that meme of like, it's like a classic office meme. And you've got like the accounts team who are just plugging away inside a cubicle. Then you got the sales team who are out there having fun. It's kind of like what partnerships versus the law team is like, I guess.
Ruby, I didn't know you liked memes. This is new information.
Yeah, they go all right. They're not bad.
He started on a Friday. We're sitting there like, it's 3:34. You're like, come on, just let's wrap this. And Rubes just says, let's make a meme. So you notice on our social channels, sometimes a meme just comes out on Friday. That's just Rubes trying to fill some time on a Friday thinking, let's make something weird
There are
here.
people that they employ to do that at
businesses.
Yeah. It's going to be a full-time job for people in the future.
Meme creator.
Literally.
Meme creator.
It's brilliant.
Ruby sent me a meme AI creator, which I think was a slight sledge that I needed to up my meme game.
Yeah.
If you can't create your own memes, get ChatGPT to create your memes.
Absolutely.
100%.
But quick story on memes and employee engagement, satisfaction, the fun parts of working, all that. At Cricket Australia, we had that workplace platform to kind of... Workface, yeah. That hub to keep everyone engaged and chat. Inside that you could have like private groups, and the group that had the most number of members in it was Kev's Update. Kev was the CEO, so you had to be inside Kev's Update. So like there was no one was ever going to have a group bigger than that. The second largest group was the one I created. That was called Cricket Memes, and it was just filled with memes. So there is value in the meme.
Absolutely. He made a name for himself.
The meme guy.
Anyway, we have one more question for you.
Yep.
We'll try and finish on a slightly serious note. If you could go back in time to private practice, Emily, who felt like, is this all there is in law? And you could write yourself a little note with one piece of advice, what would that note say?
I think that it would say something along the lines of it's okay to take the risk, because I think that I've kind of always been so focused on future opportunities, but it's so hard to think about giving up the security of what you currently have. So it causes you sort of endless angst, and particularly it was really hard to leave Cricket Australia because I loved my boss. I love you, Scan.
Scans is going over to Perth, I heard.
Yeah, he's doing something typically amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think that I would just say, you know, take the risk. It's always going to be worth it. You're always going to learn something, and it's always going to take you somewhere cool and interesting. So don't stress about it and take the risk.
Love it.
Love that. Before we wrap up, any other episodes for those tuning in related to Emsfield?
Yeah, well, we had Hyam Katrib, another head of at the FIFA Women's World Cup, head of workforce. She joined the podcast in episode 138, I'm going to say, way back when. So she's another phenomenal one. And then we've had a few lawyers on who have gone on to do different things. One lawyer who did something completely unrelated to law afterwards was Binuk Kadetawaku.
Yeah.
Finished a law degree, then decided, I just want to work in analytics. So he taught himself data analytics. So if you want to hear the different sides of law and where it can lead, Binok was a couple of episodes later in 142. So yeah, a few that people might enjoy there.
Brilliant. Well, EJ, we better wrap it up, but it's been awesome having you in here. As I said at the very top of the episode, I said we've been waiting a fair while to get you in, and it's great to have you in the state so that we could get you down into the studio. But just hearing your journey, and obviously we know it really well, having known you for a few years now, but I'm sure everybody, you know, tuning in would have got a lot out of your journey in law, but also just in sport and events. And what, you know, you said in there, you're very bubbly, you're very passionate, and that just shines through every time we see you. So we really appreciate you coming in, and all the best for the tournament.
Oh, thank you guys so much. It's been such a pleasure being on. And I love seeing the professional side of you guys.
I think we held it together.
Yeah. All right, let's go be weirdos. Guys, it's time now for the People's segment, Ask Sportsgrad, where every week we answer a question from our community. If you'd like to ask a question first, just become a Sportsgrad member at sportsgrad.com.au/community and join from there. Then you can add your question to the channel named Ask Sportsgrad on our Discord server. So get excited. It's a great opportunity to do that. Now, Rubes, this one comes from member Zoe. She says, how do I know who to reach out to on LinkedIn, and how should I approach it?
Great question. Great question. So sounds like Zoe's just starting out networking in the sports industry, which is fantastic because networking is huge. A lot of people have had in this show got their jobs through networking. So who you know is incredibly important. But to become, you know, to know lots of people, you have to get good at talking to people. You have to get comfortable talking to people first. And one way to do that is to just start talking to the people you enjoy talking to, so that you eventually just enjoy talking to people more broadly than that. Once you've got that level of comfort, go forth and target whoever you want. So to start with that piece, on who do I know who to reach out to, I would simply start scrolling through LinkedIn until you come across a post that takes your interest. So, for example, say, we mentioned Daniel Raffin at the top of the show, got a new job at the Rabbitohs. Say Daniel Raffin pops up on your newsfeed and you see that he's got a job at the Rabbitohs, and you think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how he got that job. You might just send Daniel a message that says, hey, Dan, congrats on the new job at the Rabbitohs. Must be an exciting time for you. Well done. Now, if you just show appreciation for his content and his news, and doing this to anyone in general, 9 times out of 10, they're going to respond saying, thanks very much.
Yeah.
And now you've opened the door to a conversation. From there, you can take it any way you want. You might say, hey, Dan, after he said thank you, you might say, hey, Dan, would love to learn more about the process at the Rabbitohs because I'd love to work there one day myself. Any chance you have time for a 20-minute Zoom call where we can catch up and chat? And that's an easy way for him to say yes. And I think that's the goal. So in terms of who to target the people you're interested in on LinkedIn. In terms of how to approach it, show appreciation first and then make it as easy as possible for them to say yes. Where people go wrong is they make it as easy as possible for them to say no. And an easy message for people to say no to is where there's no clear request. For example, I have a lot of people who reach out to me and just say, "Hey, Ruben," that's it. Like, I'm not responding to that.
Yeah.
Or it's way too forward and it's like, "Hey, Ruben, I really love your organisation. Can I have a job?" It's like, whoa, like I don't even know you yet.
Yeah.
So target who you're interested in and then make it as easy as possible for them to say yes. On top of that as well, like asking for a 20-minute Zoom call and specifically at the end of next week usually gives people about 9 days to prepare for it or clear whatever else is out of the way, is also a nice little tactical way to find an appropriate time in people's calendar too.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think there's this misconception out there that like networking is like in person, grabbing a coffee, first time I've ever met this person is, and one-on-one engagement. I honestly think one of the things that really broke the door down for me in terms of this and getting really confident talking to people is literally using Zoom. Like it's not a bad way to do it. And also, literally, as you said, you don't need to have 30 minutes. You could even just say, "Do you have 15 minutes that I can quickly jump on?" It takes 10 seconds to open a Zoom link. It's not hard to do. So that's just a way to make it easier. So don't think, to catch up with someone has to be in person. Like, great if it is, but if it works for you both just to do it on Zoom, go for it. Like, it's an easy tool to use. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I caught up with a lady who lives in Paris the other week. We chatted for 70 minutes over Zoom. I was like, wow, this is having a great chat.
Yeah.
So yeah, Zoom can be phenomenal and often easier for a lot of people too.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Great question, Zoe. It's one that everyone, needs to have a think about. So brilliant. Awesome. If you'd like to ask us a question or ask our friends in sport a question, again, sign up to become a member. Each week we jump on a members-only Q&A where it's an open floor for you to ask us or industry professionals any of your questions. This Wednesday, as we mentioned, we've got our job fairs, so that's your chance to talk to hiring managers, ask any questions you have about the jobs they have on offer. It's literally the easiest way to understand jobs a lot better and what's actually involved in that job. So absolutely get involved with that one. All of these sessions are also recorded. So when you do become a member, you get immediate access to all of these sessions that we've done historically, and which is, a super easy way for you to really just level up in your career. So get involved with that. You can find us on LinkedIn and give us some love with a rating if you enjoy the show. Subscribe on Apple or follow on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, one last thing before you go. If you'd enjoy a quick email from us each Friday on all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As with industry professionals and latest podcast episodes, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Head to our website, www.sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe. There's also a link in our show notes to join.